Caffeine is a stimulant, so that blocks the adenosine. It's a neurotransmitter that prevents the sleepiness.
Caffeine also gives our metabolism slight boost, around 3 to 11% increase in resting metabolic rate.
Many of us live busy lifestyles, and we sometimes rely on coffee to get us through the day. This is because of the caffeine found in it. It's a stimulant that increases activity in a person's brain as well as their nervous system. But how helpful and energy boosting is it? I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Join us as we learn more about caffeine. Welcome to MedTalk Health Talk. Coffee culture is growing here and around the world. In fact, it is one of the most consumed beverages worldwide, and coffee contains caffeine. To tell us more about how this can affect our health, we are joined today by Mabel Aban, who is a nutritionist and dietitian and head of nutrition and fitness section of Shape Medical Fitness and Nutrition Clinic. We all know that caffeine is the main ingredient in coffee. Pero baka hindi nalaman ng mga viewers natin na merong ibang mga beverages and kinakain which also contain caffeine. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes, that's correct, Doc. So hindi lang coffee yung source ng caffeine. It is also in other food items and beverages like cacao, for example. That's one main source of caffeine. So yung halimbawa yung chocolate drink has around mga 5 milligrams of caffeine. Now, it is also in other beverages like teas. For example, green tea, mga 40 milligrams yung caffeine yung nandun per cup. Well, it's also in other minsan mga sports nutrition supplements, nandun din yung caffeine. It's in sodas also. So, maraming mga iba pang mga sources of caffeine.
So earlier you mentioned cacao, no, which is the main ingredient for chocolate. So yes, chocolates also contain some level of caffeine. Right. Now, pag-usapan natin yun, let's talk first about the positive effects of caffeine. Could you name a few?
Well, in terms of the positive effects of caffeine, the reason why people are taking it is because of its positive effect on alertness, memory, focus, concentration, physical performance, cognitive performance. So those are some of the main positive effects. And caffeine also gives our metabolism slight boost, around 3 to 11% increase in resting metabolic rate. The maximum amount of caffeine that is documented without the adverse effects is around 400 milligrams per day. So that's the maximum for healthy adult individuals.
So a lot of people are familiar with the amount of caffeine that they find in coffee. What about tea? How many cups of tea is good to take in a day so as to not go beyond the positive effects of caffeine?
Well, if we base it on the average dose of caffeine, which is twice the level of your body weight in kilograms, so assuming mga 200 milligrams per day, yung maximum, so you can consume a little bit more than 2 cups of green tea if we're talking about teas. We still base it on the individual weight if we base it on the average dose of recommended intake of caffeine per day.
So, importante din na malaman kung ano yung percentage ng caffeine content with the chocolate, with the tea, and this is all based on the maximum amount that someone can take per day for the positive effects.
Yes, and ibig sabihin for chocolates, as an example, yung dark chocolate na 70 to 85%, if it contains mga 80 milligrams of caffeine per 100 grams, mga 2 small squares of dark chocolate. That's just another example.
Those positive effects, that amount of coffee that you've been discussing is for pure coffee, black coffee, kumbaga, nothing added. But a lot of people consume coffee with other things in it, milk, sugar, all of these. Do all of these, especially sugar, will this diminish the health effects or the positive effects of coffee?
Well, somehow, to a certain level, sugar, for example, can affect the perceived benefits of caffeine. For example, when we talk about weight management, even if caffeine gives a slight kick to the metabolism, if you take it with a lot of sugar, or if you're consuming it frequently with a lot of sugar in it, and a high level of sugar intake cumulatively, it will definitely affect the way you lose weight, the way you lose body fats, plus the pro-inflammatory effects of sugar. It can also affect the known benefits of different sources of caffeine in terms of the sources of polyphenols, phytonutrients, for example, in coffee, green tea, coffee. These are natural substances or compounds with known health benefits. They have protective effects from certain chronic lifestyle diseases.
Do people have to consume that amount to really see those benefits, see all of those health benefits?
Yes, well, if we're talking about the sources of polyphenols, you have to consume the sources of caffeine to be able to also consume the phytonutrients consistently. You know, it has to be a part of our diet consistently, but in moderation.
I think majority ng mga tao, when they consume coffee, 3-in-1. Karaniwan. Is this pro-health or should they limit the sugar intake? Should people start drinking black coffee instead? What's your advice?
It will help if you prepare your coffee on your own, like can prepare it from brewed coffee, so you can measure exactly the amount of sugar and the other things that you put with coffee. So that means prepare it separately. Also control the amount of sugar and probably creamer or milk. You can also choose the type of milk that you mix with coffee. So those are some of the things that we also need to remember.
Now, Mabel, aside from coffee as a popular source for caffeine, also teas, soft drinks actually contain some caffeine as well, which gives it that pick-me-up feeling or that elixir feeling that some soft drinks can give. Could you talk about that as well?
So certain types of sodas may have caffeine around 40 milligrams. It's not really that high, so that we can control the caffeine intake and even the sugar intake. We need to control the intake of these types of beverages. But in a way, somehow, yung sugar then in soda can also increase the energy levels.
Now, Mabel, you're a fitness expert as well. When it comes to strenuous physical activity, is caffeine a product to take before doing strenuous activities?
Well, caffeine is actually used in sports nutrition and even added to some sports nutrition supplements. So it's supposed to have an ergogenic effect when it comes to physical performance and even cognitive performance in athletes. But then you have to control the intake of caffeine. So it really has to be measured. For athletes, the recommendation is 3 to 5 milligrams of caffeine per kilograms per day. You also need to note the timing of intake of caffeine. And you also need to monitor your heart rate if it's really high intensity activity. So of course, caffeine can also affect the increase in heart rate. So the increase should be appropriate based on the targeted fitness level that you're training for. And overall, you should control your caffeine intake all throughout the day.
So best pa rin to talk to a sports specialist or a medical professional like a cardiologist before trying to take caffeine before any sport or exercise activity.
Fitness assessment and nutritional assessment, and of course, consultation with the doctor is essential.
Now, thank you very much, Mabel. You've given us a lot of information, especially with how much coffee to drink. So thank you for joining us here on the show. Now, later on, we will talk about more effects of caffeine on our body. So keep it here on Med Talk, Health Talk. Let's delve deeper on how caffeine actually affects our body. Now, to tell us more about this, with us today is Dr. Jan Dipasupil. He's a lifestyle medicine specialist from the Medical City. Now, early on the show, we talked about the positive effects of caffeine, how it's mainly a stimulant to our body. Talk to us about paano ba talaga umeepekto ang caffeine sa katawan natin, sa brain natin, that gives us that focus, that energetic feeling.
Caffeine is a stimulant. So that blocks the adenosine. It's a neurotransmitter that prevents the sleepiness, no, if you're drinking coffee. And then if this one is released, then nababawasan din yung arousal. And then there are other neurotransmitters that may be released or stimulated. So isa na rin dito yung stress hormones natin. You know, there's this adrenaline, so that may help us in boosting our performance. And other neurotransmitters like the dopamine and serotonin. Kaya yung mga iba na umiinom ng coffee, tea, they feel good. Ganda yung mood nila. So yun yung isang effect of those drinking caffeinated drinks.
Okay. Talk to us, Jan, about how a lot of people, when they first drink that first cup of coffee ever in their lives, they feel that positive effects. But later on, they need 2 cups now 3 cups to function, 4 cups, and it just keeps adding on. Bakit nangyayari ito?
So that's what we call tolerance. No? So when you drink a cup of coffee, so you like that mood, you like the effect, but over time it develops na parang this is somewhat na bitin or it's not enough. So you want to drink 2 or 3 cups. So it takes about 3 to 5 days for you to develop that tolerance. So you have to listen to your body na that you have to stop. No? So we have what we call some limitations of caffeine. So the limitation is up to 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. Now, to reduce the tolerance of the caffeine, you need to cut down gradually. So when you say cut down gradually, then you have to drink, let's say, from 4 cups of coffee per day, maybe try 3 cups per day. And you have to cut it down 2 to 3 weeks for you to reduce the addiction or the dependence of the caffeine.
What will happen, Jan, if someone cuts coffee altogether? They've been drinking coffee every day for years and they just quit cold turkey.
They would really feel the withdrawal effects of the caffeine. So they would feel that, oh, mahina, parang wala akong ganang mag-work. No? So they have been feeling the fatigue. Next, they could develop migraine. So yun yung mga effects of withdrawal. So we are recommending to cut down gradually.
Now, a lot of our viewers also associate too much caffeine with that of palpitations. Ang palpitations ba from coffee, is this an expected thing? Is this a normal thing? Or is this a sign that they've had too much caffeine already?
That is actually a sign that they're already on the moderate to high doses of caffeine. So you have to choose then what kind of caffeinated drinks that they have to drink. Let's say they like cold brew. That cold brew has a higher caffeine content compared with a cafe americano or other kinds of caffeine. So they would really feel there's palpitation. So talagang kumakabog yung talaga yung dibdib nila if they drank the cold brew.
Are there other health risks with drinking caffeine constantly or being as what you said, part na to ng everyday routine ko to having caffeine? Are there any other health effects that may happen?
Definitely. So, isa dito is there's difficulty of sleeping. So, if you love to drink coffee, maski 4 times, tapos umaabot pa yun ng gabi, before you go to sleep, it would delay yung habits, yung sleeping mo. There's a result of having difficulty of sleeping. Next, if you have acid reflux, so it would really exacerbate, lalo na if you're just going to drink a cup of coffee before a certain meal or you skip that meal. So lalala talaga yung acid reflux mo. Next would be anxiety. People may have this some mental health conditions, but if they keep on drinking coffee, baka mas lalo sila maging agit. There's this feeling that if you keep on drinking coffee, you want to do a lot of things at the same on one time, and just one time. So talaga na-agit ka, you wanted to do it. So that is the feeling that too much ata yung coffee mo. So you have to lessen that one.
Anxiety, sleep disturbances, and hyperacidity. Now I'm sure our coffee drinking viewers have noticed one or more of these symptoms at one point or another. That's why it's very important that we incorporate the correct amount of caffeine into our diet. So we will tell you more tips on how to do that when Med Talk Health Talk returns. Many of us start the day with a cup of coffee. It supplies us with that caffeine kick that most of us need. But later on in the day, we notice that we need more and more of it just to keep us awake. Now, to give us tips to keep our caffeine consumption at a healthy level, let's welcome back to the show Dr. Jan Di Pasupil, who is a lifestyle medicine specialist from the Medical City. Now, earlier, Jan, we talked about tolerance, on how it can build up with chronic caffeine use, chronic coffee or tea intake. What tips can you give to our viewers to lessen those feelings of anxiety, those sleep disturbances, that hyperacidity especially, which can be bothersome during the day, How can they avoid those but still enjoy that cup of coffee?
I think one of the things that they have to first is to improve is their sleep, their sleeping habits. Because if they don't have a good sleeping habit, they don't have that routine, eventually that would have a cascading effect for the next day. Next is the caffeine content and the caffeinated drinks. So let's say they love to drink coffee, but their choice is, let's say, black coffee. The content or the active substance of that coffee, which is the caffeine, it goes directly into our system, and you would really feel the boost of energy. And one of the effects of the coffee is you don't want to eat certain food, or there's a reduce of the appetite. So it would affect your eating patterns for the entire day.
One thing that needs to be kept in check as well, especially for coffee drinkers, is hydration, which maybe a lot may not be doing enough of. Talk a little bit more about that.
So caffeinated drinks is, let's say this coffee, diuretic yan. So when you say diuretic, mapapaihi ka, you keep on urinating. So when you keep on urinating, you feel dehydrated. So you need to hydrate yourself. And remember, here in the Philippines, it's high in humidity. Lumabas ka lang dyan sa kwarto o sa bahay, talagang pinagpapawisan ka na. So you need to hydrate yourself. So one of the techniques to increase your hydration is to know your body too. Again, so isa na dito is dry lips, dry mouth, dry throat, tas naging dark urine, then those are signs that you have to hydrate. Mga half glass to 1 glass of water.
When it comes to those who really see caffeine as part of their day, they can't function during the day without that jolt of caffeine. Are there any other alternatives other than caffeine to pick them up in the morning?
If let's say they love coffee, then they could dilute naman the coffee, let's say the black coffee. Or they could add more creamer, pero sana, it's low calories, low fat, yung creamer nila. Another is decaf. So, mababa yung caffeine content yun. Next is the tea. Okay? So, there is this matcha. There are other alternatives. Let's say chamomile tea. So, chamomile tea helps you in sleeping, but gives you also parang relaxation if you're gonna drink that. And other herbal teas could help you in giving you also a good mood whenever you don't like to drink coffee.
Marami talaga tayong natutunan ngayon dyan, especially about caffeine. Do you have any tips for our viewers, especially those who want to keep their caffeine in that right level, really feel the positive effects while keeping most of the negative effects at bay?
Oh yes, so you can still drink coffee and other caffeinated drinks, but know your limits, lalo na if you have some medical conditions, lalo na sa puso, no? So before you drink something, especially yung mga slimming, mga products with contents with caffeine, please ask your doctor first. Now, for a tip or tips for us to incorporate caffeinated drinks, sleeping schedules should be incorporated. So alamin mo dapat yung sleeping time and your waking schedule, followed by yung caffeine intake mo. Next is stick with your eating schedules. Kasi may times talaga that you are not going to eat, then it would trigger that you have a cup of coffee or meron pang eating of sugary foods in the afternoon. So baka nasisira din yung diet mo, masisira din yung plans mo or weight goals mo. You also have to incorporate hydration. So when you talk about hydration, sinasabi nila 2 to 3 liters of fluids. So if you would be, to help you in drinking enough fluids, is have a flask or a jug so you would know how many milliliters or ilan intake mo of fluids. So caffeinated drinks like coffee, tea, including milk teas, have positive effects naman. But drink in moderation. Listen to your body.
Napakagandang information yun. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Jan Di Pasupil, lifestyle medicine specialist from the Medical City. Caffeine can be a good addition to our diet, but as with most things in life, it should be taken in moderation. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for joining us here on Med Talk Health Talk.